The summer of 2022 was not the best on record for the west coast of Scotland. The weather was often windy or very wet, so I had to time my multi-day trips carefully to make the most of my boating adventures. Mid-July saw several days of calm weather appear in the forecast, and as I had not circumnavigated Jura this year, I decided to go for it and hoped the weather would allow a full round of the island. My route plan was to launch at Tinault, head past Oban and continue south to reach the island of Scarborough, head through the Corrie Vrecken and make an anti-clockwise circumnavigation of Jura before returning to Loch Etive, a total distance of around 150 miles, and it would take as long as it takes because the forecast was still very fickle. I left the boat tied to Kelly's Pier while I took the car and trailer home, then walked back for the boat. It was a bright and breezy afternoon as I set off in the sheltered waters of Loch Etive. The Yamaha 25 horsepower EF5 4-stroke was now well run in and giving stellar performance. I carried 80 litres of fuel for this trip instead of my usual 110 litres needed to feed the old 2-stroke, which I no longer have. It didn't take long, heading down Loch Etive and over the Falls of Laura at Connell, but I suspected progress would slow a little when I entered the open sea and had to fight into a reasonable headwind. And sure enough, as I turned into the Firth of Lorne, I had to head directly into a force 4 sea. Not the best way to start a round of Jura. If you wonder what I was gawking at, the Oban lifeboat was heading to assist the boat in the background. Her engine had broken down and she was dragging anchor, but the RNLI soon had the situation under control. As the waves got higher, I decided to turn into Oban Bay and head down the sheltered side of the island of Carrera, instead of passing down its exposed seaward side. As mentioned, I was open-minded on my route plan, knowing full well the Corrie Vrecken would be suicidal for me on such a blustery day. I had my full camping kit, so intended going as far as I could, then stop for the night. If it was still as rough in the south of Carrera, I would camp in the sheltered sound. I was a little surprised but also delighted to find the sea a bit calmer south of Carrera, which let me continue to Easdale. Although approaching the sound of Easdale, the sea started to give me a hard time again. I decided to land in Easdale Harbour, visit a friend who lives in the island, then head for a camp spot for the night. I'd had enough of being bounced around for the day. I enjoyed a beer and catch up with my friend. Then it was time to head across the sound to my chosen camp spot, so I returned to the boat and headed on my way again. I parked the boat in a sheltered inlet well out the way of incoming swells, then pitched my tent on a grass bank beside the sea, then scoffed a Tesco ready meal before taking a couple of tins of beer for a walk. I sat on the rocks slurping the beers and watching the waves until it was time for bed, and day one was done. Day two was a 5 a.m. start, as I wanted slack water for heading through the Corrie Vrecken Gap. The blustery breeze had died during the night, so I was keen to get going again. The sea was smooth and a drizzle of rain was in the air, as I made my way towards Scarborough and the Corryvreckan. My timing was perfect as I enjoyed a smooth passage through the gap at slack water. Although the tide started to turn as I approached Dealing Moor, I knew that in another half hour's time this area would be mostly white with overfalls. I turned into Glentrossdale Bay to check the suitability of camping here on future trips. It certainly looked promising as long as I didn't mind sharing it with the wild goats. Having seen what I came to see, I didn't hang around because although it was mid-July, I was feeling a little cold. The smear of rain and the early start contributing to my chill. I headed south along the exposed western coast of Jura, planning to stop for a coffee and a walk to warm myself up at Glengarrisdale Bay. I anchored in the sheltered shallows of the bay and boiled some water for a coffee and poured myself a bowl of cereal for breakfast. As I slurped and scoffed, I also enjoyed admiring the beauty of my surroundings. Then I took a short walk over to McLean's Cave, for no other reason than to get my circulation moving again, and to absorb the atmosphere of this remote and rugged place. Feeling much warmer, I happily jumped back in the boat and set off again, knowing I was heading for Loch Tarbert, one of my favourite places on the island. I also knew that to get there I had to pass an incredible remote landscape, untouched by human hands. There are no roads, fences or telegraph poles to be seen anywhere. The only sign of life are from the seabirds, the feral goats and some deer. There are no sheep or cows in this wilderness. Eventually the high sea cliffs start to recede, and the paps of Jura come into view. Finally, the familiar sight of Rowan Cottage comes into view, and I know I have reached lovely Loch Tarbert. I turn into a sheltered bay off Loch Tarbert and unload the boat and set up camp. Then enjoy a coffee and sandwich while admiring the familiar views. Refreshed, relaxed, and because it was still early afternoon, I decided to go a walk to pass an hour or so. I put on a pair of gaiters to keep ticks and other biting insects away from my ankles, and also offer a little protection if I accidentally stood in an adder. Jura is rife with these snakes. I noticed the bothy part of the cottage had been cleaned up since my last visit, but I was still happier staying in my tent. I then decided to walk northwards along part of the coast that I'd seen from the boat. I wanted a closer look at some of the many caves that dot the coastline, and walked around 5 miles. Unfortunately, the camera batteries flattened during the early part of the walk, so my footage is very limited. The walk had worked up a thirst, so I enjoyed a tin of beer as soon as I got back to camp. A smear of rain started, so I then cooked and scoffed sausages in the bug-off shelter. And then, because the wind started to blow, I turned in for the night and day 2 was done. And at that, I will continue with day 3 in part 2 of this series. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Thanks for watching.